Hi, my name is Beck and welcome to my reaction to my 2022 reading goals and priority TBR, and then my new reading goals for 2023, and also my new priority books that I want to read. Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to my 2022 reading goals. I wanted to put a few of these goals down because who doesn't do reading goals in January? So the first goal on this list is to read 50 books. In the past, I would set this at about 100 and just try and reach that point. And that was starting to become unrealistic because I do YouTube videos, I edit, I film them, I also work full time. So to read 100 books on top of all of that, it's quite a lot. I could do it in the past, but I'm starting to realize that I don't want to burn myself out early. And if I push myself, then that's usually what happens. This is pretty much the same as what I would want to set this year for all of the same reasons. I obviously do work full time, but now I'm going to have a longer commute to and from work as well. So while that gives me more audiobook time, it also means that I'm going to be more tired when I get home at nighttime. So 50 books I think is good because last year I read 76 even though I set my goal at 50, and so as long as I set myself a goal of something, that kind of gives me room to add to it as well. So with my to be read lists for every month, I put aside a bunch of books that I would ideally like to read, but sometimes my mood indicates whether I want to read them or not in the moment, and so I might just add a whole bunch of stuff to my to be read pile that I didn't initially talk about, but in my wrap up I'll obviously cover it. So at least this way, setting 50 books will make me go, you know what, I think I could read a little bit more than that, maybe I'll read a bit less, who knows. Also this year, which is a very exciting thing, in April my partner and I are getting married, and it is going to be amazing and I'm so excited for it, but that also means that while we're having a wedding, we're also going to be going away, and I obviously haven't planned a lot of that stuff yet, but we have general ideas. And so because we've got such exciting plans coming up ahead, I also don't want to lock myself into, I'm going to read this many books and then be like, bye, I'm going overseas for my honeymoon. So there's a few things at play this year that weren't relevant last year. So I'm just excited about what this year will bring, and I'm excited about all the reading I'm going to be able to do as well. So I like to play it by ear, but I think 50 is a safe number. And then last year, what really affected my reading was sticking to books even though I should have put them down and DNF'd them, did not finish. It's when you put a book down and you don't continue. I continued The Great Hunt and I continued Empire of the Vampire, and I gave both of those 2 stars, and I did vlogs for them, so I kind of dedicated myself to them behind the scenes, and then I felt obligated to finish them. And if I'm feeling like I should stick to a book just to finish it, that's not really a book that's worth reading. I want to enjoy stuff. So DNFing books is going to be something that I make sure I do this year. This is exactly what I want to do this year as well, except I'd add a caveat to that. So DNF books, but also because in 2022 I kept putting a book on my to be read list consistently, even though I wasn't feeling like I wanted to read it at the time. I just felt obligated to read it because The Lost Metal was coming out. So I put The Hero of Ages on so many to be read piles, and that's a book that I loved and will give 5 stars when I reread it. However, because I put it on so many lists, I really burned myself out whenever I thought about it, instead of letting myself breathe and have the space to go, actually, you know what, I really want to read that now, so let's put it on this TBR. Didn't happen. Also, I'm sorry about the birds, but they seem to congregate on this side of the house, and so if you hear them in the background, just know that it's summer in Australia. But anyway, The Hero of Ages is a book that I don't want to repeat the scenario for in 2023, so my goal would be to DNF books, but also don't carry a book over into the next month if I feel like I'm dragging my feet with it. Put it down and then revisit it later. And in 2022, I did a books I did not finish video and I DNF'd 25 books. So I think for the most part it is working because I had a really decent reading year last year and I didn't give out a lot of negative ratings, which was great. So I would like to carry that over into 2023 and DNF the heck out of books. Another goal is to continue series that I've already started, and I will have a separate video about which series. I also want to continue series this year as well, but like I mentioned here, this will also be a separate video, so stay tuned. Then I go into talking about my priority books for 2022. So for the most part, I think I will have addressed these, but let's find out. And some of the books that I want to do that with is The Expanse. This is the 3rd book. I finished the 2nd book, Caliban's War, at the end of 2021. It's funny because I did address this very much so, because I got 215 pages into this and then I put it down. So I'm staying true to my DNF rule, and that featured in my video from last year. So I have addressed this. I did put the Expanse series down, which is sad, but what can you do? And then I also want to obviously continue Dresden because I've been reviewing Dresden as I go, but because of my jaw surgery, I've kind of parked it because I don't want to have any videos in this video series where I have a chipmunk face. Not that that's a problem, I just want it to kind of be neater. So I will continue reading this, I also need to wait for my partner to catch up because I'm reading them after him. And so he tends to go in and out of reading for like months at a time. He won't worry about reading. And then in another month or two, he'll find the fire again and pick up a whole bunch of stuff. So I need to just like poke him and make him continue Dresden so that I can also continue Dresden. This is exactly what happened in 2022. However, I did read Skin Game and I have written spoiler notes about it to film my review. I just haven't actually motivated myself to do so. So maybe one of the things I need to do is film an updated Dresden review for Skin Game and then poke Dave some more so that he can read more of Dresden. Because both of us want to continue, but we just keep not thinking about it, which is terrible. So I really want to focus on finishing this, or at least getting up to date on this series this year, because I know it's not finished, but I have all of the books, and so I'd like to get up to date on that. And then two other series that I definitely want to continue that I've dropped the ball on, especially with this one, is the Lady Astronaut series. The Calculating Stars was book 1. I gave it 4 stars. I did continue this historical sci-fi and I read books 1 and 2 and then did not finish the third book because I put it down after 3 hours. So at least as far as that priority book, I finished some of it and then I tried to finish the rest and just realized it wasn't for me. The author changed the style in the third book, and while some people loved that, it wasn't for me, so I put it down. I also want to continue the Witcher series of books. I have a review for the first book, and then I also have the second on my January TBR. You know what's disappointing? The fact that I really wanted The Witcher to be amazing. However, I also put this one down because of the sexual assault in here and how it furthered a character's storyline, and apparently that only gets way more prevalent as the series goes on, and I thought that that wasn't really as much of a thing in this series, so I'm really disappointed to say that I put this series down. And then my second last goal is to use the library more. I am a real culprit of just going out and buying stuff online and then not using my library, and it's kind of a waste of money. It is kind of a waste of money if I keep going out and buying random books and not using my library, and a few times this year I have tried a few different library books, although I do get into this habit of forgetting that they exist because it's all just on my phone on an app, and then they return themselves, which is what happened to the Southern Book Club's guide for Slaying Vampires, which is a book that I was genuinely enjoying, and then my library returned it and I'm like, oh. But in terms of using my library more versus buying books, I think I will try and find a happy medium between those things this year, because now that we've bought a house and we've got bills to pay and everything and different expenses and different things to fix around the house, like installing a new aircon unit, for example, or getting the gutters replaced, or buying paint to do the walls or the eaves outside the house, you know, all those kind of costs that just build up, even just groceries. Now that I've got all of those expenses, I'm not buying as many books in excess as I used to, and so I'm actually researching what I really want to physically own and give a try, and looking into them a lot more rather than just buying them on a whim and seeing, oh, this is a nice cover, I've heard decent things about this, I think I'll give it a try. I'm doing that a lot less, and I'm buying books secondhand or having friends send them to me if they're getting rid of them and that kind of thing. So I'm being a little bit more mindful. So while I'm not using the library as much, this is not really going to be a goal for this year. It's just something that I've noticed and I'm more mindful of now, and I'd rather buy books or have them gifted to me on a wish list, for example, for a Christmas or birthday that I've done a little bit of research on. So I am buying books, but that is completely fine because we love a book haul. And then the last kind of, I guess, goal, it's more unofficial, but it's just something that I wanted to keep in the back of my mind, is I want to read every single day in 2022. I have my little journal, my reading tracker, my weekly tracker, and I color in a square every time I read that day. I did have that journal and I gave up on it a few months into the year, which generally happens with goals and stuff. You know, you commit to them at the beginning and then it's hard to maintain them. But I think I'm doing kind of like a loose version of this in 2023. So I don't have a tracker, I don't journal, I don't have a planner or anything. However, I'm looking at the 30 by 30 by 30 rule, and that is something that you kind of apply to every day, whether it be reading, writing, working out, cleaning up, anything. So if you do 30 minutes of something at any given point in a day, even if you don't want to do it like working out, I don't like working out, but I like how I feel afterwards. So if I just go, okay, for 30 minutes, you're going to suffer and you're going to feel better about it afterwards, then you can basically achieve your goals in little chunks. So because we have moved house and we are unpacking, we have a zillion boxes full of crap. And so I'm like, well, if I just spend 30 or 40 minutes a day going through maybe 1 or 2 boxes, eventually they'll be cleaned up. So I'm kind of trying to apply that to my reading as well. So whether I read every day or not, I don't know if that will be possible, but if I apply that 30 rule and I go, I know I've been so busy, instead of sitting here and scrolling through social media on my phone, I'm going to spend 30 minutes reading instead. So that's kind of what I want to do, like adjust my routine and try and make room for reading, whereas before I might have just felt stressed out or just not thought of putting aside that time. So that is very much what I want to do this year. In my previous video in 2022, I list a bunch of books that I wanted to reread and then a few books that are my priority TBR for last year. And so I might just skip over the rereads because obviously I've read them before, so it doesn't stress me out whether I reread them or not. I'll probably just get to some of them this year anyway. So let's go into my priority books from last year, and then after that I'll talk about my priority books for this year. And then in addition to those, I also have my priority TBR. I've only got about 4 books on that. So the first one is The Bone Ships. All I know is this is like a pirate kind of adult fantasy, and I ended up DNFing this one as well. But at least I've addressed it and it's not, hung over me in terms of looming over my TBR pile. Like, I have actively gone and tried reading it. So at least I put out the effort to attempt this one. And then I also have The Fated Sky, which is book 2 in the Lady Astronaut series on audiobook. And then of course I've got The Witcher 2, which is Time of Contempt, I think. It's got a purple cover. I'll put it on the screen. And then I've also got Magic Bites by Alona Andrews, an urban fantasy series about werewolves. So I did like the Alona Andrews books because I did read Magic Bites and then I also read Magic Burns. So in terms of those reading goals, I think I did all right with my priority books. I also finished The Fated Sky by Mary Robinette Kowal, and then the third book I said that I DNF'd, and then the Witcher books I obviously have put down as well. So I think that's pretty decent. I have continued a series that I said I would, and I attempted both other series that I ended up putting down eventually too. So I'm pretty happy with those kind of stats, to be honest, even though obviously I wanted to love all of them. That's not always realistic, but I at least have attempted it, which is a good thing. And now going into my priority books for 2023, I also have 4 books and all of them are fantasy that I have either neglected or just got new. So I want to address the fact that these are lingering on my TBR cart and I would like to read them as soon as possible because I think I will enjoy all of them. The first one is The Vor by Brian Catling, which is a book that has been on my reading pile for a very long time, and I think it's more of a slow burn fantasy, which is why I keep putting it off. And it's also part of a trilogy, but I've been told that you can read the first book and it kind of stands by itself, in the same way I guess that The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson can be read as a standalone, but it's also linked to a trilogy of Mistborn Era 1. So I think if I go into this and I just think about it as one book, that might be a little bit more palatable to me, whereas before I've just been like, no, it's a series, like that's going to be an undertaking, don't start it yet. It's slow burn, you want to read quickly, right? So don't read this yet. I just need to get past this, and so I might look ahead at all of the different chapters and maybe break it up a little bit so that I can read it over a period of time rather than just forcing myself to get through it in a month, because I don't think that kind of thinking goes along with a slow burn book. That's how I think about Robin Hobb as well, and I love Robin Hobb, but her books are very slow paced through the first 2/3, and in the last section is where it all picks up. So if I think about The Vor in a similar way to how I think about Hobb, maybe I can get through this and not let it linger anymore. And then we have Battle Mage by Stephen Aryan, which is described as magic and mayhem collide in this explosive fantasy from a major new talent, and it follows Balfras, Vargas, and Talandra. One is a princess and spy master, one's a common soldier, and then the other is a battle mage sworn to fight and die for a country that fears his kind. So I think all of this could be a great amalgamation and action-packed series, and again, because it's a series, I didn't start it, but I also wasn't stressed about starting this in 2022, because I was like, it can be a new epic fantasy series that I discover in 2023, so that's why I kind of put it aside specifically to start this year and hope that I like it. And then of course we've got a book that I have been talking about on and off all through 2022 but didn't quite get to, and that is The Black Hawks, and this follows a character named Chet who is a soldier in a dead-end job and he doesn't want to do it anymore, and I think he has to transport someone who is kind of like an unwilling character. I feel like it's very reminiscent of a video game where you're a character who has to protect someone who's kind of annoying but they end up growing on you and that kind of premise really makes me intrigued, and I think this is going to be a very light in tone told story, and I think I could get into the humor and sarcasm of it, which I'm quite looking forward to. It makes me think of a cross between Trader's Blade and also Kings of the Wild in terms of tone and voice, and I haven't even started it yet. So already those are 2 series that I really enjoy, and so I'm projecting that enjoyment onto this book and hoping that it holds true. So cross your fingers for me because I really want to love this. And then lastly, on my priority TBR for 2023, 2023 is a massive chunk of a book, which is also a continuation of a series that I discovered in 2022 and loved, and that is Memory of Souls, which is the third book in a Chorus of Dragons series, and I loved Ruin of Kings and I enjoyed The Name of All Things, and I'm really hoping that I end up loving this one as well. I've given 4.5 stars and then 4 stars to the books 1 and 2 in this series, so I'm hoping this is at least a 4.5, maybe even a 5, because it's setting up a few tangents in the first 2 books that I think will bloom in this one, and that's what I'm really excited about. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil anything, but high fantasy, queer positive, very excellent in terms of retelling all the different kinds of tropes that we're used to, but subverting them in a very unique and surprising and exciting way. So I'm really looking forward to continuing this, but it also is a very long book. So I'm very aware of that, and I'll try and put it on a TBR pile that is surrounded by short books so I can finish those and feel like I'm progressing in my reading goal, and then also read this at the same time and feel like I'm ultimately winning by finishing a long book. So that is the end of my 2022 reaction and my 2023 goals and priority TBR. If you have any priority books for the year, let me know what they are, but thank you so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.